Hey, so we've reached the final session of our symposium. Can't compete with that. Hey, so before we get on with it, I'd like to give a special shout out and recognition to the one person really most responsible for this weekend's success, our colleague Sarah Kirksey. So let's give Sarah a huge round of applause. So Sarah, thanks to you and the entire travel and conference team. Well done. And then thanks to the AV team, really making the magic happen behind the scenes. And really making it special not only for the audience here in person, but the folks online and the folks that'll watch it over the coming years as it's captured there. So, pretty amazing. Now we've got a pretty full session, almost like a pretty full stage for the one together. We stand alone together, Actors Reminiscences Roundtable. It's a hard word. And, really the experience of starring in the miniseries, as you've seen already, has facilitated lasting bonds and lifelong friendships. And in the subsequent 22 years since the premiere, these relationships have remained strong and in many ways probably have gotten much stronger. And, here we've got all the actors that have attended this year's reunion in this final session to share recollections, experience of the casting process, boot camp, the set premieres, reunions, and anything else they want to say as we go forward. So without much further ado, we've asked two of our symposium co-producers, Mike Cudlitz and Frank John Hughes, to co-moderate. Frank, you're kind of co-moderating from the crowd. But with that, we look forward to seeing how you organize this chaos. And take it away.
Okay, so it's really great that we get the chance to let all of us talk. And we want to make sure that I feel like I have talked so much in the last 2 days. I want to give other people a chance to talk, and I think there's some really interesting points of view that we haven't heard from yet. And we'll get into replacements and a bunch of other interesting things. But Mike and I wanted to start with, we had this incredible experience of being overseas. And beyond boot camp, a lot of bonding happened just by being overseas with a bunch of strangers. The bonding continued off camera as well, as we got to know each other in vans going to work every morning, our families getting to know each other, walking the streets of London together. And then we'd also love to hear from some of you who went home at night, like went home to your actual house. We can't imagine the Band of Brothers experience without being far away from home. We'd really love to get into some of those. We've talked a lot about boot camp, but we'd love to hear some of those stories. Where could we start? Mike?
Start with Jason.
No pressure.
And that was a random start. So after Jason, it doesn't have to go down the line. It can jump in.
Yeah, jump in,
Feel free
jump
to
around.
add to the conversation or not.
This is actually appropriate because my first 2 days on Band of Brothers, I was just thrown into the deep end. And the first 2 days, like as Ross was saying before this, the first 2 days of Band of Brothers were basically me and Story, He had his big speech on the Jeep, he had his Operation Overlord speech. But I'm this Irish guy who's been cast as the company commander, and I hadn't been to boot camp. Why send me through boot camp and go through all that expense and experience when my character doesn't even get his boots onto French dirt, which is fair enough. So I show up and I have my brand new spanking, shiny Corcoran jump boots on. Everybody else's was broken in from boot camp, not mine. A couple of guys were calling me new boots. I was like, I'm your commanding officer, so it's enough of that. And right after that, Captain Dye said, okay, it's time to lead your men out to the airfield. And I was like, what? I don't even know how to march, let alone lead a company of men. And he said, what's the problem? I said, I wasn't at boot camp. I don't know how to do it. And he said, oh, Winters, come over here. So Damien led the men out to the airfield. That was fine. And I was just winging it. So that was day one. Day two was the big speech in the hangar. And man, it was cold that morning. And I was looking out at a bit like this assembly, actually. It was about this amount of people. And I had a big speech, and there were like 4 cameras at the back, and I knew that Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks were going to be looking at the dailies tomorrow. And every time I did a take, they would change the dialogue because it wasn't quite matching up with the map of the Normandy coast. And it was a lot of, I could feel my heart pounding, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Not least because after the first take, I was wearing a garrison cap, you know, a soft cover. And Captain Dye came up to me and said, you got to take that off. And I said, what's wrong with it? He goes, who gave you that? And I said, well, it's wardrobe. Just doing what I'm told. I don't know. He said, take it off. You look like a namby-pamby moron. So that's why I'm not wearing a hat in that scene. And I just thought, it was one of those moments before the next take, and I just thought, I don't know if I can do this. Like, this is a lot to be asked. Yet this is also, you know, what I asked for, but this is a lot. And I just thought, just in that moment, I thought, why am I here? What am I doing? Why am I doing this, really? And it was that moment that everything clicked, that it wasn't about me. It was about Easy Company. It was about playing this man who lost his life. You know, his war started and ended when a flak shell went off in Stick 66. So it just crystallized it for me. And hearing everybody's stories since, it's really that crystallizes the whole project, you know. So my experience, even in those 2 days, as an outsider on the periphery, even though I was supposed to be the commander, was really sort of kind of set the tone for what the whole thing was going to be. So yeah, it's kind of appropriate that I was told to jump in first. It's kind of appropriate that I feel like I'm on the periphery here at the back in the corner. But I will say, I was invited to every reunion from the first one, and these guys made me their brother, even though I only worked on the project for, I think it was a total of a couple of weeks. I think even the end of the couple of weeks, I don't think I worked. I was on call. So it was a great pleasure and a great honor, and to be a part of this, and to be treated like one of these guys. So thanks.
You crushed jumping in the first time, and you crushed it this time. So that's why we start with you. We know you can kill it. Mike, since we're on interesting points of view, can we go to some of the other guys? Well, we'll go to that, and we can go back to the other question of just, you know, we had this thing with, and jump in, Mike, whenever you want, but we had this thing with replacements that were going to be an issue that were coming in. And we were taught by Captain Dye and the cadre that we were not to welcome them. And some, like, poor Popeye had a really hard time. You know, it was just, we were not to welcome them because we were supposed to give them that experience.
This wasn't for us only. It's sort of like this, you're going to ignore that guy. You don't have to train to ignore somebody.
Right.
This was their boot camp. This was it was basically the captain saying, if you want to do them a service, give them a tiny taste of the experience that the replacements had, that the replacements still talk about to this day. You know, even in the documentary, the replacements talk about what it meant to be a replacement. Now they understand how the men felt, and ultimately why. But at the time coming into it, we had to sort of replicate our experience to that. And people like Renee came in. So why don't you talk about that, Renee, a little bit about what it was like to come in to this fully formed group and know that you had to spend the rest of the time with us, but you did not start with us and never will have started with us.
Right. Thank you very much
Ever.
Mike, for that. Ever. So I was the last American from the original Toccoa men to be cast in this series. So I was, as Mike was, I was a carpenter, I was a handyman, I was working at a client's house in the attic, putting boards down in the attic, when my call came in and said, hey, they're offering you this job. And I thought to myself, oh, cool, I'll have maybe a week or two, I got this job, awesome. And my agent goes, well, you're gonna be in this show for 19 weeks, and then you're gonna be laid off for about 2 weeks, and you're gonna be back for another 9 weeks. And I'm like, what? Okay, can I think about it? Give me a call back in an hour because you're leaving tomorrow. So I'm calling my fiance at the time. I'm like, I'm getting offered this job. Should I take it? She goes, are you nuts? Go. So I had just bought a house. I gutted it, and I was going to leave her alone on this house. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll go. So I find myself on the plane reading this, the scripts that I had, the book, Band of Brothers, and any kind of information that I had that the production had given me. And I'm thinking to myself, this is odd, this is weird. I don't know what I'm getting myself into. So I leave Thursday, I land Friday morning, I get driven to Hatfield, and I walk in, I have long hair, I'm just tired, and I walk into this room. All these guys are just high-fiving each other, they have their Corcorans on, their blouse boot, and I'm scared. I am scared because I did not go through boot camp with these gentlemen, and I have to prove myself. And I know I have to prove myself, but I don't know how to do it just yet. Later on that night, we all decide to go to dinner, and we are dressed up, suits, etc. We go down to Piccadilly Circus, and there's a 4 or 5 star restaurant that we all attend, and they're asking me, hey, so how did it go? How did you get the job? And I'm like, I don't know how I got the job, really, because I had like auditions on tape with Meg and Angela, and it was like 3 or 4 months. I don't know what it was, but it was just always going in and reading for something else and coming back, reading, leaving. Never with anybody else. It was just always on video. So they go, what did you do today? Oh, I got my hair cut, I got my wardrobe on, I shot my gun. Compton, what did you say? I shot my gun. Drop and give me 20. We have waiters, drinking wine everywhere, and I'm like, I'm looking around the table, I'm looking at Mike, I look at Ron Livingston, who's like, the normal guy. And he's looking at me going, yeah. I get up, take off my jacket, I look at the waiter, who's looking at me like I'm an idiot, and I'm like, he's my lieutenant. So I drop and give him 20. From that moment on, the guys have been like, okay, cool. He'll be all right. He'll be all right. So from that moment on, it was pretty cool. So.
Hey, Doug.
Yes.
Tell us your side.
My side. Well, I think we're all very fortunate because to have a panel that's so diverse from military advisors, actors, producers, writers, and rarely do you ever see casting directors at these stuff. But it's very important to point out why Meg Lieberman, because this cast is amazing. But you were also essential in my casting, because if it wasn't for you, I would not be here. I was auditioning for West Point, which was another series during pilot season at the same time that I guess this show was already filming. So I went in to audition for West Point, and in her audition room, she had these life-size posters of the Second World War, many of them. I think there were 20 in the room. And so I did my audition, and I did a really good job because I got a call back to producers. So as I'm walking out of the audition, I'm like, what are all these photographs about? She's like, oh, it's a project I'm doing about the Second World War. And I said, well, if there's anything in there for me, please bring me in. She's like, I don't know, it's a really small project. It's, I don't think your agent would want you doing. I'm like, I come from the indie world, please. She's like, you'd have to fly yourself because we're shooting in London. I was like, I don't care. Please bring me into this project. Weeks go by, and she did bring me in. And obviously, the scene was where he was cleaning, and I did the scene sort of poorly miming, like, who else was poorly miming? Or yeah.
Bro.
And she's like, stop. Just, we're gonna have you sit down. I'm gonna frame you like this and just do the scene, which I was like, great, because I'm not a good mimer. And I shot it, I felt great, left, never heard from it. Then I got a call, this one audition. Didn't even tell me the name of the project. And I get a call, it's my manager, he's like, you booked that Tom Hanks project. I was like, West Point? He's like, no, Band of Brothers. I'm like, oh, they changed the name? He's like, no, this is Steven Spielberg. I was like, what are you talking about? I've never auditioned for a Steven Spielberg project. And he was going off the list of, London and all this stuff. I was like, wait a minute, what, really? And so I went running as an actor would, because I'm gonna prepare for this, World War II project, and I'm running in Santa Monica because we have these stairs that are like Toccoa, kind of, in Santa Monica. And so I'm running up and down these stairs, and then I end up on 3rd Street Promenade, and Tom Hanks is watching a movie with his family. And I see him, and I'm like, run up to him. I'm like, hey, Tom, I'm Doug Spain. I'm going to play, Private Tony Garcia. He's like, that's great. I'll see you there, kid. And then he leaves, and I was like, wow, this is great. And I get on the plane, and, it's the best of the best, and I land here, and, I go to the production office, and in a Mercedes-Benz, and I'm wearing, a shirt like this, and some shorts, and my flip-flops, because I'm from California, and I get out of the Benz, and out of the changing room comes Jimmy Matteo, and he's like, what's this? So I'm standing there, I'm like, hi! Because I had no clue what I had booked, honestly. I was like, I don't know what this is. I did read the book on the plane, and I was excited. But after that, when he took me into the tent, you could feel the respect that all these guys had, and it was instant. I sensed it. I was like, oh, these guys are serious. I better get rid of these flip-flops today. And from that moment on, you just felt that, because I had read the book, so I understood, and I had spoken to Tony. So I knew his version was that, he had to earn their respect. So that stuck in the back of my brain, and I was like, I have to earn the respect, because even Frank didn't talk to me. And we did a movie like a year before, and I was like, this guy won't even say hello to me. So I picked up on that, and that was my experience of I had to earn my place, and it's understandable. These men had lost so many, so you understood why it was so hard for them to try and bond. And these guys just sort of led the way, so thank you, gentlemen.
Well, that's great. Mark?
And thank you, Meg.
Both marks.
Yeah, Mark, you want to jump in and say what it was?
Yeah, sure. I was thinking this morning over here, we were talking about Band of Brothers, and I feel like if you went to boot camp, you were a big brother, and if you didn't, you were a little brother. So I was definitely a little brother for the whole time I was there. But my first contact on set was we were rehearsing for 2 nights, we were being taught how to row quietly for episode 5 to get across and rescue the British paratroopers. So it was that first sense of everyone was going through their character names and all that stuff, but I was still brand new. Yeah, I got a job. This is amazing. That kind of thing. So then I was in a boat with Liebgott and Dexter, and we would row across in complete silence, and we're getting this technique down. And then when you went back the other way, there was a tiny bit of chat, but not much. And I think I was being a little bit too chatty. And Liebgott told me that Sergeant Martin wanted me to stop talking. And I said, well, you can tell Sergeant Martin to shut the F up, right? Absolute silence. And the smile just starts to fade on your face. And Liebgott goes, Sergeant Martin, did you hear what Private Hashi just said? And he goes, yes, I did. And he says, what do you want to do about it? He goes, I need to think about it. And then Liebgott goes, permission to throw Hashi overboard. And Dexter goes, I need to think about it. So for 10 minutes, I was in agony. But I was actually more scared, not of the water, but if Captain Dye saw me go in, how was I going to explain that? That was the biggest trouble I was going to be in. I was like, new kid, ends up in the water, no one's taking the blame except me. So though, yeah, that was my introduction to the rules of the game, my first night. There you go. Yeah.
Wow. And
I am
Pete-
so sorry.
That's great. You didn't throw me in.
Dex saved you.
Yeah.
Peter, tell us about you. Pete had a very difficult thing to walk in, to just come in and just drop some incredibly demanding acting, and you just crushed it. And what was it like to walk into that?
Thank you. Hey. Isn't this amazing that we're all here? Just stop for a second and take this in. This is incredible. 20 years on. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is an amazing moment. Thank you, Frank. This has been special from the moment I even heard that it was happening. I was going to make it my mission to be on Band of Brothers. If it took, sleeping in the road to make Meg Lieberman notice me, I was going to make it happen. And luckily, she did see me. I auditioned twice. I got in. I read for Spears, and I get a reasonable psycho spin on it. And I thought, oh, this will be good. And then I got this other guy. And my girlfriend at the time went, well, he just yawns and he walks away. Well, that's not very good, is it? And he just yawns and walks away. And anyway, she's just jealous. So I got it. And there wasn't much about Dyke in the book. There's not really much reference. I didn't have much to go on. So coming from the theater, I had the word and I had what was in the script, and that's all I had. So I slept with the scripts at night, right? Hoping to absorb magically their essence, truly. And gradually, I've sort of found my way in. First day on the platform, getting there, I arrived in. Who was the first person I met? I think it might have been George, and then Dexter, who I vaguely had a friend we knew in common, just to try and get some common ground. But everybody else was solidly, who's this guy, And I put on the uniform. I had to go find Captain Dye. I went, we're all in, just go for it. And I walked up to him and I said, Lieutenant Dyke reporting for duty, sir. And he went, fall in, Lieutenant Dyke. And I immediately walked off in the wrong direction. And he went back this way. And I went to join the line. He went, nope, you're a lieutenant. You come outside the line. So from then on, it was just, I'm trying to catch up with these guys who, just like the Real Easy Company, are 6 months in. They all know what they're doing. I'm scrabbling to pick up the pieces. And even though they were told not to, be nice to the replacements, these are great humans, great actors. So if I got stuck, I was going, what do they mean when they say the blah, blah, blah? And they were like, okay, just follow me. And we worked it out, and it was great, and the camaraderie was solid. Now, Dyke being from Brooklyn and having an Ivy League background, I at night time would go home and put on a tweed jacket and a tie. That's what and be sort of Ivy League in my approximation of Ivy League, and different and distant. So I'm the outsider. So that's pretty much what I was. I was the outsider for the whole duration. Some flash moments that I'd like to give you is just Dale Dye barking around, and you immediately feel the lift of that. Where is he? He's going to, you know. I went to sit down in a chair once. You know, we'd been marching all day. I found a chair to sit down in. I heard this. We don't play that shit, Lieutenant. So, and the chair was removed, and off I walked. And then the battle stuff with Matt. I do remember Matt very well coming through the explosion, and it's, you know, just like the film. We watched it. I think he did it twice. The three of us, Donnie, Rick, and I, were behind the haystack, and it was an enormous movie moment happening right in front of our eyes, and the impact of that really shows in the show. Again, how lucky was I to have Rick Gomez and Donnie Warburg, who were all in, and I knew that once we all knew that we were all in, there was no breaks for a cup of tea. We were solid. I hated going home at night. I couldn't stand going home, and I wanted to stay and be there as much as possible. I would call the production office to ask if I could come in on days off. It's him again. It's the actor. He wants to come in again. No, you're not needed today. And I would do that. And I'd asked to go to boot camp like 3 times, and they wouldn't let me go. Anyway, so just to let you know how all in I was. And then in terms of playing this difficult, unlikable man, very challenging, but you know, somebody's got to play him, and I'm going to do a little exercise with all of you right now. So I'm going to make all of you a lieutenant, a replacement lieutenant right now, right? Just think about that for a second. You, each and every one of you, are a replacement lieutenant. You are going to be sent to join the hardened Easy Company, who you've probably heard about, and you already have 2 bronze stars from actions before you're going to join. So 10 days previous, you've just had an action, and now you're going to join Easy Company, and I'm just going to posit that maybe within you, this lieutenant, you are starting to unravel, and you don't quite know how to handle the situation, and you're trying to process your own feelings because you're young, and you haven't been in battle before, and nothing really prepares you for this. And not only are you going to be joining the Easy Company, you're going to be the commander. So now you're going to do this attack on Foy. And this is my own theory on it. I suspect that his disappearing and his being unavailable was perhaps his own way of trying to regulate his own mental state, right? And then it culminates with the breakdown on Foy. Now, we don't see it in the show, but he's shot in the arm. And he didn't die, which is what the show kind of posits, but he got a promotion. And we shot a sequence at the end. You remember, Mike, I remember. We shot a sequence at the end where Dyke is put in a Jeep and he's driven away after all the sad, sorry carnage of that attack on Foy. And all the guys look at him, and we spent quite a lot of time on it. And it was a really good exercise. And they didn't use the material. It's sad because it would have just given another button to that very real man. This is a real person. He had to live with the weight of what happened. Yes, he did get a promotion, but he stayed in the army. He was a career army person. I can only imagine what it must have felt like for him inside. We only glimpse it in the TV show. Is it fair to him, to the life of Norman Dyke? I don't know. I would say it's not. But, you know, this guy went through this stuff, and the weight that he carries is heavy. I will never know what that's like. You will never know what that's like. So let's be grateful, and let's maybe think about it in terms of compassion. If we're going to talk about war, if we're going to talk about, you know, as humanists, we're going to really talk about it. And this is part of the story. It's another part of the story. And it's because he went through it that I don't have to, and you don't have to, our sons and daughters don't have to, our grandsons and granddaughters don't have to. So keeping it in the mind of compassion, I'm very grateful to be part of this team. When the show was over, I carried this story within me. It wouldn't leave me alone. It would keep me awake at night. I thought, am I the only one who feels this way? Am I really? And I met Ross on the film, And immediately we drawn in, and I met Frank and everybody else, and I realized we all feel the same way, all of us, and not just the actors, people who worked in makeup, people who worked in production, everyone felt it. And that is the lightning in a bottle that is this show. So I'm really proud to be here. Thank you. God bless you.
Mark?
Hello. Mark.
Speak about your experience coming in, because a replacement as well.
Well, I was an original Tacoma man. Doom was original Tacoma man. And I didn't get on boot camp. And on day one, it was that scene with Lieutenant Meehan where we came in. So I was fresh, new boots, all that kind of stuff. And I'd met some of the boys on the read-through on the Friday before. And they all looked like hell. I could use a worse word, but I'm not allowed. I was fresh as a daisy. So we get to the Monday, and Lieutenant, as it's been said before, Captain Dale Dye got us all off the bus, and we all marched down to the hangar. And you felt like a badass. You really did. You know, you were with your boys, wearing the kit, but I wasn't quite there yet. You know, and I had one line that day. And we're standing there in like a little circle. And Captain Dye's like, Dukeman, where's Dukeman? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, yeah? I'm like, oh shit, I'm in trouble. He's like, come here, maggot. I'm like, okay. He says, you address me as captain, sir, or skipper. I'm like, okay. He's like, no. Okay, skipper. And he made us all. I mean, he did. He really did. And from that day onward, I felt part of it. And he called me Wedge ever since because I was a useful tool, apparently. So, which I accept with gladness. But for Hashi, I remember it's in episode 5, and Dukeman sadly went in episode 5, and Tom was directing it. I call him Tom now. And so, and this is how amazing the series was. You'd have Tom Hanks, 2-time Oscar winner, probably America's greatest living actor, comes up to me and says, well, what do you want to do with the scene? I'm like, I don't know. And it was basic. It was like one line. It was like, Hashi, you get the penthouse. And he's like, do you like him? I'm like, not really. I don't know him, and I don't want to see him die, you know? And he says, well, there's your answer. And I was like, okay. And I wouldn't look at Hashi. I'd be playing with my cards, and I'd be talking to him whilst looking at my cards. It was just one of the greatest pieces of direction I've ever had, you know? And he let me find it. And that's what was great about this production. Everybody was great at their job. Everybody let you do your job. That's what makes it special, I think. I think surround yourself with brilliant people, and brilliance appears. And I'm forever grateful to be in this thing. I mean, Meg Lieberman, you're responsible for a lot of things in my life, including me getting married. So I kind of thank you for that. And my wife's watching, and I love you, baby. But yeah, I mean, it's like my life's changed immeasurably because of this production. I've got friends here that I will know for the rest of my life, you know, that have helped me out when I've been in dark times. I mean, George has been a rock for me at certain times in my life. And yeah, it's the greatest thing that ever happened to me, and apart from my wife, obviously. I'll leave it there.
Robin, I remember very well your first day, and we had to be tough on replacements, but I was not going to be tough on Babe because I knew we had a short time to get somewhere important. So what was it like for you showing up in that tent?
Yeah, as you say, it was slightly different for me. Babe was a replacement, but the Babe of then was not the Babe of now, or not now, but yeah, then. So I got not quite a free pass, but people were more maybe lenient, I think. I mean, people would steal your rifle and then say,
hey, babe, where's your rifle? Hey, Captain, where's babe's rifle? And he's, Efron, drop and give me 20. God damn it.
That sounds like a Liebgott move right there.
Yeah.
I just meant I was going soft on you, not the rest of
Nobody
the guys.
else did. Nobody else did. But I remember coming
they
in.
did, though, because you led, and we were like, all right, there's enough other guys to pick on.
So I did, yeah, it was a slightly different experience for me because I arrived almost the same time as Doug and Mark and James McAvoy. We all arrived at the same time. So I remember walking into that big tent that we all got changed in, and there being I can't remember who walked me in. It might have been Freddie Joe. Somebody walked me into the tent and said, yo, listen up, babe's here. And this palpable frisson went round the tent. Everyone was, oh, babe's here, get Bill, where's Bill, find Bill. And I was a bit like, oh, hello. Oh. I thought they were going to give me shit. Apparently not. So I was welcomed by Bill that first day, and then everybody else took up the slack.
I think it really speaks to Mike and I. We've talked about this, but it really speaks to another thing, that if you knew your characters was close or friends with someone else, it really was a shorthand to getting you to be really deep friends very quickly. And I know I felt that with you, and I knew Johnny Martin was another dear friend of Bill's. I had the same experience with Dexter, but it was, yeah.
And we talked about this briefly, about that being open to it, and so it becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy, becoming friends, and, but knowing who they became post-war, you thought, right, well, if you're Bill and I'm Babe, then we're going to get on. It just seemed like a completely natural thing that we would get on. Of course we would.
That's what we had with Garcia and Hashi.
Right.
Because I think we were on the bus or the car back and forth. It was an hour drive, and he was telling me that he was looking for a place to stay. We had just met. I think it was day one, and I didn't really know anything about him or anything. He's like, yeah, I'm looking for a place to stay, here, so because he's from Ireland and he was a local hire. And I had this 2-bedroom flat with a spare room, and I was thinking in the back of my head, I don't know this guy. Should I offer him my room? That extra room? I was like, I don't know. What if he's a psycho? So he was going on, and I kind of hesitantly said, well, we're foxhole buddies. We're supposed to get along and get to know each other and go through this experience together. So I was like, well, I do have a spare room in the flat. And then I think he was also a bit...
But it was, I'd spoken to Hashi for weeks, I'd spoken to Garcia for weeks, and that was my biggest thing, is like, whoever's playing Garcia, if we're not friends, how's the whole thing going to work? So within an hour, he asked me to live with him, and I moved into his place.
and
they were very happy.
It was the best experience. I think Donnie lived above me, and Kirk lived above him, Toy.
Well, you took my place.
I took your place.
You
yes.
moved into my spot.
Yes, I did.
My family didn't come out till later, so I lived, Kirk, Donnie, me, and when my family came out, we moved into a bigger flat, and I guess a replacement got my spot.
Yes, and we had parties every weekend. Me and Hashi really got along.
I don't remember that.
Of course you don't remember. It was fun.
George, why don't you tell it?
Yes.
Did you at the time live in London?
I did.
So tell us about that. How was that literally coming in every day, going home every day and dealing with your theater friends and people who were in the business, and you're off being a soldier during the day, probably to a project that every single one of your buddies wanted to be in.
That is true, but I'm with Peter completely on that. I didn't want to go home. I mean, I found it a distraction and not something I wanted to do, so I was looking forward every day to coming into work. I have something else I'd like to say.
Yeah.
Please do.
Excellent.
It's about to take it out of the the filming stuff, and I live in Beirut, and I was in the explosion 2 years ago, and most of the guys here know that I lived there, and within 20 minutes, I think every single person had sent me an email, or called, or sent a text from Ross telling me, Georgie, get the fuck out of there, mate. Bring the family, come to LA, you got a home, leave it alone. And, you know, that's something that people I've known since I was born didn't call me. But these lads did. And that's something that is a credit that starts with Meg and Tony and Dale and the cadre, and then all the time that we spent together. And that's, yeah, it's just irreplaceable. And with that, I'd like to say I was talking with Freddie in the car, Freddie Joe Farnsworth, about what happened there, about the explosion, saying, you know, I was running to get a passport, running to get money, thinking, what are we going to do? You know, is it an attack? Is there going to be another explosion? Getting my kids in the elevator well where we thought it would be safe. I'm bleeding everywhere, and you know what Freddie said to me? He said, well, imagine that when you have to look after men and when you're being shot at and when that's still going on. And that's the reality of war. And that's the reality of what the real men went through, and that what we did our best to portray, and that Dale and all the guys drilled into us from day one. In a way, I don't think we have any sense of what it really is to go through that. And if there's some way that what we did and with Band of Brothers can raise the awareness and continue to sort of share the horror of war as well as the camaraderie of it, then, you know, God bless us a little bit.
Shifty, where were you living in at the time? Because you were American, but you were abroad, right? What was your situation?
No, so where was I? I was basically like 13. I'd left my mom in Tennessee, and I'd gone to live with my dad in England. And so basically, I ended up in boarding school. I was in boarding school for 5 years, and so I had made it my home. I mean, I'd grown up, kind of settled in London, but it wasn't my home. You know what I mean? It was kind of what I had learned to kind of embrace through other people and friends, and then I was starting acting. And I was just in this wild world of this life in London, and all the kind of the spirit of the time. But it didn't feel. I didn't have like roots in terms of my father was living in Germany at the time, and so I was kind of like a gypsy, you know. So I was all over the place, living at a friend's house up in North London, which, you know, made it very easy to get to set. And so it was kind of, I wasn't settled. I wasn't feeling like I was British necessarily. I didn't feel American necessarily. But it was interesting, this relationship. It was kind of like, well, we're all family here. You know, but you guys are living. I know you're far away, but you definitely have some nice places to live, and that was good to see. And I was like, let's all go over, and you were very welcoming, you know. And I felt the kind of, we were all together, but it was like half of my family, I guess, being half American, that had kind of arrived, and so that was very welcoming, you know, to me in a certain way. I had my British family and my American family, and I was like, hey, we're all family. So it was that was kind of the development of home. But it's interesting because I think about it, and as I sit here today, I was always kind of flying above everything, kind of like, not fully grounded into my home, into my body, into my life. I was always kind of just slightly above, just gliding through. And over the years, it's like getting to know these guys and getting to know what we've done is like the grounding into of that experience. The more I understand how beautiful, how wonderful these people are, and what a privilege it is to be a part of this. And so basically, it's at the time I really was like a dumb kid. I mean, I just flying above, thinking I don't know what I thought I was, but over the time, and I think it's like home is starting to feel, despite all the problems that, over the years going through, but home really does feel more like home now than it did then. And the experience of getting to know everybody, it's almost like I think back at Shifty now, who I am now, I go, what an amazing thing to be able to have been close to someone like that, but everyone here, just and sometimes I just go, how do you really say thank you sincerely, and I to everyone, and kind of there's no words for it sometimes. You just go, well, it's been good, and and I hope it continues to stay good.
I wanted to go back to something that we were going to start with, and then we kind of went off on replacements. But some of the guys who had kids at that time, we lived in another part of town. The Americans, we lived in another part of town. But there was a building that we all wanted to live in, which is where a lot of the Americans were.
The Palace.
Yeah, and it is because it wasn't just boot camp. Boot camp set the tone and got the work going, but at a certain point, we were bonding outside of boot camp. We were bonding offset too, and that it continued in a very 24-hour cycle. So you were in that building, weren't you? And Rick, tell us what it was like what it was like. You kind of continued the barracks. I mean, in nice apartments, but you guys were all living in one building. Like Mike and I weren't living in the same place. Yeah. What was that like?
You came by my place one time. Do you remember that?
Yeah, Jimmy Mattia was there.
No, it was just you and me this night. You don't remember this? There's a little bit of noise.
Do I want to remember this?
Yeah, it's just a funny thing between
Yeah.
you and
Okay.
me.
Yeah. So yeah, tell us
There's
about
some
it.
kind of banging, or you must have
I'll
been
go
hanging
on.
a picture or something. I don't know what's going on. Who could say? I wasn't in the room with you. But I knocked and was like, "Come on, man." It was like 2 in the morning or something. You came around here. I think you thought that was an invitation.
Oh.
And then we hung out for a while.
Yeah. Did we smoke a cigarette?
Maybe.
Yeah. Did we?
The
have a
place
drink?
that we lived, we were on top of each other, kind of.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so we would shoot nights, or we'd be in whatever situation we're in, and it was just a frat house, basically, for us.
Well, there was a courtyard in the background.
Yeah, in the backyard,
Yeah, there was a pub nearby. Mm-hmm. If you still had steam when you came home, you'd kind of
You did
look
that.
to see if if there was someone still
Yeah.
awake you could talk to about your next day.
Yeah.
And so yeah, there was a lot of
It was Ron, Neil, Jimmy, you,
yeah.
Ian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bailey.
Who else? Renee. You stayed there for a bit?
I did. Right at the beginning, I lived with Ron. He did what, the boys here did. He was like, what are you doing? God, I lived really far away from town, further than most, I think. And the drive every morning, I felt bad for my driver. I didn't care, but he had to be outside my house at like 3:30 a.m. every day, and it was killing him. So I would stay with Ronnie, and then I stayed with Renee for a little bit, and then I decided to go home.
Do you remember the doorman who worked at the guy at the front desk there at Marsham and Horse Ferry? St. John's was the street it was on.
No.
So I went back. I was just shooting with Graham, and I went back, and he was there.
Still there. Wow.
22 years later.
He's lovely.
And he saw me walk in the security camera. And he came running up the thing, and he was like, Luz! We took pictures together. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
And his son worked there as a little kid, and he's like, yeah, he's 70. I was like, that math doesn't work out. I think he's probably 30, something. But yeah, it was crazy. The place hadn't changed at all. That really became like our house for, and you wound
For
up
a year.
on the top floor somehow.
Well, so I did a switcheroo.
Yeah, talk about that.
I was like one of the last people to get a room, and I was like, what? What? Where's it? And finally, I'm like, there's a room. And I'm like, well, is there another room? So I went to the guy at the front desk and said, are there any other rooms in here? Maybe I could, because if Dale had known this, he probably would have maybe do 1,000 push-ups. But anyway, I just kind of asked a few questions and said, well, maybe I could trade some of my per diem to upgrade to that room, you know? So it was a pretty good room, but I was above you, and so you could keep an eye on me. You know, it was so nice to live in London, in Westminster, because if you drank too much, you could go right down the street to Westminster Abbey and apologize, right? So, and you know, we were close to Big Ben, so you could go over there and like watch people in Parliament and see the Beefeaters and the police guys. I remember I was coming home on a Razor. That's a scooter. And it was a new thing back then. You know, you didn't. I was always an early adopter of technologies, so I think. And I'd gotten a lot of the boys to go see a guy named Mose Allison over in the West End of the jazz place, and there was a jazz pizza there. And Mose Allison, I don't know if anybody has ever heard of Mose Allison, but he's a fantastic singer-songwriter, jazz musician. Just the most clever lyrics and everything. And so I was, it was at Ronnie Scott's. Anybody ever heard of Ronnie Scott's in London? Yeah. Yes. And so, yeah, I was just so enthralled that I was going there to catch a show, and I came home late one night, and some very tall man decided he hated scooters. He went after me with his brawly. So an umbrella in London is called a brawly. So he decided he was going to just teach me a thing or two about riding around scooters in London, and he started to hit me in the head with his brawly. And that thing bent around my head, right? And so then I'm like, this guy's 6 foot ever, right? So, I mean, he's got to be 7 foot. You know, he was tall, but very lanky and strange. In the middle, like right where that subway tube lets out, I decided to have combat with him in front of these police that were just like eating an apple, watching. This is interesting. A guy with this thing, and he's fighting this giant, and he's beating him in the head with a Broly. That is fantastic. You know, what a show. And so I was wearing a pea coat that I'd gotten from a movie that I'd done in Rome called U-571. And it's a good old Navy issue, solid, yeah. Thank you. Well, that kind of saved me because you ever seen a dog when they have a rash? You know, they've got this stuff so they can't scratch themselves. They wear a cone. That thing, as he struggled to destroy me, for whatever reason he hated razors, had some trauma, I'm sure. He pulled that thing off of me, and I had it like a cone around me, and I was able just to kind of back out of it and run. And I ran all the way past the Abbey, all the way to our little home, and tucked myself neatly in my apartment, and sucked my thumb, maybe. I don't know. But about an hour later, I decided I could, like, peek out, and I went back to look for my razor. Anyway, so London was fun. You learned a lot, and anyway.
I remember going to your place, too, the guys with the kids, because you had a different spot, and it was like visiting a different planet going to see you guys. Because there was kids.
Oh, it was very sedate, too.
It was very sedate.
A whole different vibe.
Yeah. And,
I had one night in that building, and that was when we got there, Jimmy, being a good Italian-American from the Bronx, made dinner the night before boot camp. And he made this incredible pasta meal. And we sat around and we ate, and we like milked the night as long as, because we all had like 4 a.m. pickups to go to boot camp. And
Ron and I had food poisoning because we went out to lunch the day before.
That's right. Oh,
we weren't at that
wasn't
dinner.
Jim. Wasn't Jim.
No, it wasn't
yeah, Jim didn't get you sick.
No, we had food poisoning for the day.
Yeah.
We missed that dinner, though.
And we had that dinner, and right when it was time to say goodbye, Donnie, in his like wisdom that he always has, says, you know, I think tomorrow we're all gonna meet ourselves, and some of us are gonna hate who we meet. It begins tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it just ended the night. We had this laughter all night, and it was just such a dark tone to end the night on. We all knew he was right. We were like, I'm going home. And we just went home and got in our cabs and went home.
I think those were New Kids lyrics.
I had no idea. I had no idea.
Watch this dance.
He's trying to sing with us. That's what he's trying to get.
I actually, when we were talking about when I first got to London, I only worked 2 days because you guys were going on vacation for 9 days because you had been filming. So I got there, they gave me a bunch of money, which was my per diem. I worked 2 days, and then I had 9 days off. And so I was like, well, I'm in Europe. So I flew to Spain, and I had a friend there, and we went through, I guess in Spain, every part of Spain is celebrating a saint. And we were in Granada, and I guess the people there didn't like my Michael Jackson moves. So I almost wasn't in Band of Brothers because during that time, me and my friend were attacked, and he was stabbed near the spine, and I was very fortunate. I think I've been watched, blessed, because I sort of ended up on the ground with a couple of them, and something kept saying, get up, because when you hit the ground, if you know about street fighting, it's kind of over for you. So I ran to the tent, and then I was there, and I was surrounded by hundreds of people and Spaniards. I was like, my name is Spain, Jesus. You know, I'm gonna die in Spain. This can't happen to me. And they dispersed magically. And it was because my friend had fallen, but I didn't know that at the time. And as the dust cleared, I could see one of my sandals there, and I'm thinking, this sandal's just bad luck. I got to get rid of them. But I did think about that time, and I was thinking, wow, I just started a show, and I wouldn't have made it. But at least, Mark Huberman has a key to the flat, so he won't be left out in the streets of London. But yeah, it was since you guys...
You should have been wearing Maddie's peacoat. It would have saved you.
But I think I was blessed. I feel we've all been blessed on this show with many of the things that happened to us during London, so...
I was going to say, we were talking about boot camp, and we had talked about it a lot with the captain, but there's something specific we never talked about. There's two things specifically we never talked about in the panel or since. One was the night march. Does everybody remember the night march? Yep. We're going to talk a little bit about the night march, and two was the jump training, when we went to that other facility and we actually jumped down to Descender. Talk about what you remember about either of those two events.
Rick, start.
Or don't.
Okay, there was a cadre with us on that march, and he kept hurting himself. Do you guys remember that? And every time I turned around, he'd had a different injury, but you couldn't stop this guy. What? That was the captain. The captain. Oh, okay.
Them are fighting words, don't you?
Captain Dale Dye, yeah. No, so that night march was pretty interesting because we were learning to look at maps and read the maps, and we were at some point where we were lost, and we couldn't find the maps, and so I feel like Dale appeared out of nowhere to help us find our way, and we were doing the officer duty, learning how to read a map. So that's what I remember about the night march.
I always tell the story, but we were down, we were out there for hours. It was cold, we were in trenches, we were waiting, we knew we were going to be attacked. So everybody was really tense, waiting for something to happen. And it was dead quiet. I had Joe Toya behind me. We were just sitting there, and out of nowhere, I just felt someone right here. And I looked, and it was Gunny, it was Freddie. And he just goes, I own the night. And he took off. He just took off. And right after that, we walked down. And do you remember when the gunfire opened up? It was just madness. It's so hard to, I can't imagine if those were live rounds, what that would have been like. But
I think this was like on day 2 of the sleep deprivation. So some of us had already had like a night of guard duty, which, you know, you're on a schedule. So they would say, okay, I have to get up at midnight and do guard duty, which meant I could go to bed at 10, but between 10 and 12, you're not sleeping. You're up, you get back to your bed at 2, you're up at 4:30 for the next day. So we'd had a whole day, and then we were told we're going out on this night march. And so everybody's like just beat up and exhausted by this point. And I remember us all, you know, the hill was getting larger, and we're all told to crouch and sit and wait. And we sat there for hours, it seemed. In, you know, the dead of night, it's freezing cold. We think, something big must be going on. But in reality, I think we were all just trying to figure out what we were going to do next, because we were told the Germans were going to attack. We were told that this whole thing was going to happen.
In the middle of this, I was told by Hashi and every guy out there that Bull was either chewing tobacco or had a cigar in his mouth. That's their only memory of him when they're describing him. Like, always. I was like, well, now sometimes he doesn't. No, always. Okay. So I was like, well, I've never chewed tobacco before. So when I was at home, I was like, well, I'm going to try to chew tobacco. I don't recommend that to anyone. They used to have this brick tobacco that they would have. It was just basically a solid brick of chew, and you would bite off a chunk of it. And I think the first time I did it, I bit off a chunk, and I went to the sink to throw up. And it never got any better after that. So I went down to this Red Man that we have here, and they were like, a buddy of mine's like, just do a little bit of Red Man and with some gum. And I was like, all right, I can tolerate this. I'm chewing Red Man that night. I am high as a kite from chewing Red Man for like 4 hours. And they're all like, I'm exhausted. And I'm like, oh man, this is insane. And Ross is like, I think they're gonna ambush us. I'm like, no, they're not. They might. No, they're not. You think so? High as a kite. Continue.
So I have a question. When they did attack and we had to return fire,
They didn't stand a chance.
They didn't, no. But I had the Thompson, right? And the muzzle flashes were very extended. So I was trying to work out, how am I going to see after I fire this thing? Because the flash would blind you. So I'd try to close one eye and fire with it, you know, so that when I opened this eye, I could still see. But then someone else next to me would fire, and then I could lose vision in that eye. And now I knew why the guy who kept having different injuries was running into everything, because now I was running into everything, because I couldn't see anything. So I don't know. How did you guys deal with that?
Honestly, I just ran and fired. I just emptied clip after clip after clip. It was so much fun just running into
I think we were just excited that something was happening, you know, because we'd been on the ground for 4 hours in the middle of the night. So when it actually sparked and came to life, I think we're all like, great, we can warm up and, you know, finally get moving off this fucking hill.
I think we have to. We're going to turn it over to Robin in a minute to kind of do some closing comments. But one question I haven't had a chance to talk to people about was, and if everybody can kind of go around, what was it like to leave it, to just be on this 10-month adrenaline high of bonding, and then, like, I know that I've said this before, but after I shot the episode with my leg, when Bill loses his leg, I was gone 2 days later. And I wasn't really ready for that. It was like, it was really hard on me to just know I was leaving everyone behind. And it was at that point that you realized all these guys you became close with, they live overseas. A lot of the guys were in New York. I was in California. It hit me for the first time. I didn't know if I was gonna see people. I think it's played a big part in why we wanted to get the reunions going, because we just weren't ready to leave that. So what was it like for everyone? I'd love to hear what it was like to be yanked out of that.
So Juman got killed in Holland October the 5th, which was episode 5. And when you get your scripts and you see where your character arc and where he's going to go, and you see, okay, he's going to die at some point. And so everything before that is leading up to that point. you know. So you try to act like you don't know you're going to die, but you know you're going to die, you know. So, and the paycheck ends that day as well, which kind of sucks. But it was the actual day comes along, and it is very emotional, and nobody really wants to talk to you. Nobody really wants to look at you, because by that time you're invested with these people, and you're not William H. Dukeman, but you are that character, you are that guy, you know, and you are respecting that guy, and these guys treat me or you or whoever the actor is as that guy with that reverence, you know, which is an amazing mind trick, as Frank says. But you do it, and you believe in what you're doing, and you want to honor these people, you know. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about these guys, this show, and it is. And God bless Tony, and God bless Kurt, and God bless everybody for doing that, because these guys will live on eternally because of this show, which I think is his greatest legacy. And my guy, I mean, sorry, I'm going a bit off base, but I've got a pretty personal connection with him. I feel. Anyway, I never met the guy, obviously, because he was 20 years old when he left this earth. So it was maybe about 10 years ago, I was sort of down on my luck, you know. I was having some hard times. Self-induced, I might add. But, and then I was on Facebook, and I get a little message from a fan who's a female. It's quite a good-looking female. And so we start talking. And she's like, come visit. And she lives in Colorado. Dukeman's from Colorado. And so I go visit. I end up staying. We get married. I adopt her children. And I have to thank William H. Dukeman for that, you know, which is probably the greatest gift that this show has given me. I mean, like, we had some fun. We had some drinks, you know, and I will always be ever grateful to these boys for being my friends, you know. But Dukeman, I owe him big time. I mean, I'm lucky. I got two higher powers. I got God, and I got William H. Dukeman. And so I got his service number tattooed on my arm. Yeah. I love that guy. I'll shut up now.
Mark, I don't know if you remember, it was probably a few years ago, and it ties nicely into the museum. I was doing one of the tours, the London to Eagle's Nest tours, and I wrote to you because
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
I went to Dukeman's grave, and I remember writing to you saying, "Hey, bud, I took a picture for you, and I wanted to send it to you, and I do it for any of the other gravestones that I come across." And I said to you, "Have you had a chance to go out?" And I remember he turned around at me and he said, "You know, I've wanted to go this whole time, and I can't bring myself to it."
That's true. That was true.
But you also backed it up by saying, "I know I have to, and I know you did."
The thing is, I mean, I don't want to get into like Saving Private Ryan territory, but I didn't feel that I earned his respect, you know, and that's on me. Do you know what I mean? Because I came out of that show and I was quite affected by who this guy was. I mean, I didn't know who he was. I never met him. But it just affected me on quite a high level, personally. And I just felt that I needed to earn his respect, you know. And I think now I have, you know. I think now I'm blessed with my wife. I'm blessed with my kids. I've been to his grave. I went this year, and I broke down, and I put my hand on his grave, and I said, "Thank you." I said, "Sometimes I don't thank you. But you're the reason, and I'm the man I am today." So, yeah, I'm blessed. I'm blessed. Thank you, Ross.
The one thing people always ask me about the show is like, as an actor, have you played any other roles that were like this? And I've never associated Band of Brothers with kind of Hollywood content. It lives in its own universe. And I've been trying to find a word to describe what Band of Brothers has given to me. And I guess, and I'm going to cry, Bruce, but luckily I won't be the first one. The word is family. It starts with the cast, which is a band of brothers. And then it goes into the Garcias for me, the Hubermans, you know, these are families. The, you know, Heffrons, Guarneres, Tippers, these are all families who have welcomed me into their lives because of Tony. And there is no other project that has done this for me in my life. This has nothing to do with me as Douglas Spain, the actor. This is everything to do with Tony Garcia and the company of heroes that he was with. These men created a bond so strong that we are all now here, a part of that bond. And so that's just, I'm so grateful to them for allowing me into their lives, into their families' lives. So thank you, Easy Company.
Robin, you want to say a few things? You got
My
the mic.
closing remarks?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to take the podium.
Yeah, absolutely.
But first, hey, how about that for timing? But first, a short message.
Hello, everyone. My name is James Matteo, and I had the great honor of portraying Sergeant Frank Perconti in the HBO miniseries Band of Brothers. I wish I could be there with each and every one of you today, but unfortunately, my my bonehead little brother had to go and get married on this very weekend, so I cannot be there. But I would like to thank the World War II Museum for putting together such a great event, and all of the sponsors and the volunteers that helped put this together. To my band of brothers and my band of sisters that are there, you know how much this means to me. You know I would love to be there and celebrate and honor the men of Easy Company and all the hard work that we put into it to bringing their story to life and etched in cinematic history. But I cannot. So enjoy the day. Enjoy a drink for me. Tell as many stories as you can, and behave. All right? Curry.
Well, it's a very great honor to stand here before you today, probably one of the great honors of my life. First of all, I'd like to echo the words of Mike. Take a moment to acknowledge, thank the museum, the staff, the volunteers here for the incredible job they've done organizing the symposium. Every single one of you should be incredibly proud, but in particular, the sales team for booking and then cancelling and then rebooking and then recancelling and then finally booking all of the guests here today, and as has been said, the travel department for pulling this whole thing together. So, thank you, Darcy, Carrie, Cara, Molly, Lisa, Jeremy, Nathan, and Sarah Kirksey. I'd also like to just very quickly thank my incredible wife, Pauline Lynch, for helping me write this. I wrote the bits you like. If any of that falls flat, it was probably her. When I was first asked to say these words, I began to think about all the different ways in which Band of Brothers has affected the lives of the men and their families, my life, the lives of the other cast, and many, many stories and thoughts came to mind. I was reminded of my 23-year-old self. I'm a young actor from a really small town in Scotland called Arbroath. A town so small, even many people in Scotland haven't heard of it. Despite its historical significance in relations between Scotland and England and a particular declaration of independence, but that's another story. As we know, the audition process for Banner Brothers was incredibly tough. I think they called me back a half a dozen times before finally putting me out of my misery and telling me I'd be playing some guy that I'd never heard of, this guy called Babe Heffron. So I looked into him a little bit, and I started to get just a little bit nervous. Me, a skinny Scottish redhead playing a swashbuckling American hero from Philadelphia, a city that everyone's heard of with its historical significance and relations between America and England and a particular declaration of independence. They were big shoes to fill, but I thought we might find some common ground. So, with the confidence of youth, I packed my bags, I moved down to London to begin filming, with not the first idea about how profoundly this single acting job would affect my whole life, or that I'd be standing before you today, a couple of decades down the line, in a museum in New Orleans, giving the closing speech at a Band of Brothers symposium. As some of the actors have alluded to, when you're cast in a job, you turn up, you do your best to get along with everyone, you try to honor the material you're given, you try to turn in a decent performance, and when that job ends, everyone goes their separate ways, and that's that. But Band of Brothers was not that job. Band of Brothers was something entirely different, and it gave the actors involved an experience that is, I think, totally unique in the world of entertainment. And I think it's real credit to Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg and Kirk and Tony and Ivan and HBO that they implicitly understood the importance and the sensitivity of the work they were making. In what I consider to be a huge mark of respect for the real-life sacrifices of the men of Easy Company, they involved the surviving veterans and their families in the production process. And so we actors, as we've heard, or some of us anyway, had the incredibly rare honor of meeting the men we were playing. And we began to understand the importance of the show we were making. Not in the usual commercial, will it be successful, will it launch my career kind of way, but a much deeper, more meaningful level. And then before we began filming, I was thinking about, of course, there was the boot camp, which, not a patch on the real Easy Company boot camp, of course, what they experienced, but it was arduous enough for some of them to forge their own bonds, which in turn, the replacements did. We did too. Like Babe and Bill Guarnere, some of us made friends for life. Babe and Bill. There's a couple of guys. Like many of the war generation, they never particularly talked about their experiences in the war. It wasn't until Stephen Ambrose's book came out, and then the show was made off the back of that Babe and Bill realized they were part of a wider story that needed telling. And so, as Trish said, they began to tell it to anyone and everyone. They visited schools to tell kids what had happened to them, their stories and the stories of the men who never got to come home, the real heroes, according to Babe. But, of course, they were all heroes, each and every last one of them. I thought about all these things. I thought, too, about my friendship that I now have with Babe's daughter, Tricia, who I've just spent the week with, along with my wife, exploring and enjoying this incredible city. Trish has visited Scotland. She's stayed with us. She even tried haggis. I mean, who knows if she would ever have done that if it hadn't been for Band of Brothers. On one occasion, she brought her niece with her, and she's now become a friend of my son's. So there's another generation that's been touched by this ripple effect of this show. Who knows how many more there will be. And Trish now carries on the work of her father. She's been going into schools recently to make sure the younger generations know about what happened to Easy Company in the Second World War. I thought about Susan Smith-Finn. Until publicity began for the show, Susan, who was one of the daughters of Burr Smith, hadn't really connected with any of the other families. And she had no idea what her dad had done during the war. Can you imagine if that had never come out? The show remedied that, and she and Trish met and became really close friends, and she's a friend of mine too. I thought about the happiness of seeing cast members when they're working, or of hearing about the cast, many of whom do more than just act now, about them creating films and shows and art together, of Frank and Rick and Mike making a music video for Frank's son's band, or the joy of me being involved in something like that, making a film a few years back that was written and directed by Lieb Gott and produced by Ed Tipper and also had Skinny Sisk in it. I just marveled at the fact that a TV show has afforded me, this little boy from Arbroath, the opportunity to travel the globe and along the way meet fascinating people and make friends and learn more about Easy Company and what they did, and so much more about all the other men and women and children whose lives were affected by the war right across Europe and the rest of the world. And I got to meet people like Bradford Freeman and Bobby Zumi and Buck Marsh, and hang out with the incomparable, irrepressible George McAlpin and Babe and Bill. I call him the king. But everything I've mentioned is born of one of the most harrowing times in world history. Men holed up in trenches, cold, hungry, frightened, not knowing if they'd ever see their families again. And, of course, many didn't. Men jumping out of airplanes into hostile territory. Men surviving right on the edge of existence with no idea that one day their names would be known across the world. That one day, when there was peace in Europe, people, most of whom were not yet even born, would take up their experiences and do all they could to make sure that such horrors were never seen again. I'm sure we can agree there's still a lot to be done in that regard. Mankind, unfortunately, does appear to have a penchant for destruction, but fortunately, not all. Here in this room today, we have some of the biggest advocates, I hope, for peace on the planet. As you explore this magnificent museum with its hugely impressive documentation of World War II, bear in mind that behind every exhibit, every warboat, aeroplane, helmet, uniform, weapon, every shell stood a person, an individual, and behind them, their families, and their families to come. That's us. Everyone here. And that, I think, is the true legacy of Band of Brothers. All of you here and the thousands of people online this weekend have attended and listened and laughed and cried and, most importantly, learned because of the combined effort of a show released almost 22 years ago now, and, as importantly, because of the work of the museum today, the past and the present, combined in a way that we hope will improve the future for all of us. And Band of Brothers is a gateway. It's a portal to another world when ordinary people were called upon to do extraordinary things. It captures people's imaginations and makes them curious to hear more of these stories of bravery and heroism and humanity and empathy. And the museum provides a place for that to happen, for people to gather together and learn and share stories. And by doing that, we hopefully grow and learn. Hopefully we gain a little more humanity, a little more empathy. We hopefully learn from the past so we don't repeat the same mistakes today or in the future. And as Anne Frank said in her diary, where there's hope, there's life. It fills us with fresh courage, makes us strong again. That's the legacy. One that's carried on brilliantly by the museum and its amazing staff and volunteers, by everyone involved with the show, by all of you in the audience, everyone watching online, by everyone that the show has touched. Individuals united by a common bond, like Babe and Bill and all the men all those years ago, because we know, like them, that there's strength in numbers, that we may be individuals, but we stand alone together. Karahi! My boys.
Thank you, Robin and panel. That's an incredibly tough act to follow, and an amazing show, and it's certainly an incredible opportunity to learn myself. Quick reminder to the folks there, upcoming travel programs, and then the international conference in November. Great opportunity, and while you're thinking of it, so what's next? Now our speakers are going to make their way over to the Louisiana Memorial Pavilion, the original D-Day Museum. Please stay in your seats for the official close of the symposium with a few special videos. When you are over at the autograph point, though, if you look up, you've got the C-47 there that actually dropped paratroopers at D-Day, at Market Garden, supplies to Bastogne, and the last drop over the Rhine. So another place to look at the authentic setting as you do that. But thank you for being here. I'll pause just a second, and we will start. Yep, that's what I said. We'll wait till the music stops and cut the video. How's that?
As a general rule, I just kept everything to myself, and then when it came out on HBO, all these friends of mine would contact me and say, why don't you talk about it? Who are you going to talk to?
I'm a happy guy. I've been always happy, but I was always perfectionist. As again,
as a general rule, I just kept everything to myself, and then when it came out on HBO, all these friends of mine would contact me and say, why don't you talk about it? Who are you going to talk to?
I'm a happy guy. I've been always happy, but I was always perfectionist. As again, I could not attain perfection, but I always try. I always will, even before the war. As a kid, I wanted things right, and I strove for those things. Again, I didn't make it, but I tried, and I made my men do the same thing. I insisted on it, and perhaps I was a little tough. Not a little, I was tough as hell. But they didn't appreciate it until all came back. If you understand what I'm saying.
Sorbo bonded us against him. Sorbo, he was the bonding force. He was the one that kept us together with that training. Now, as we bonded together, we got to know each other better. So you found out that if I'm with you, there's no way you're going to get killed. I'll give my life for you anytime. Same way the feeling is you're going to do the same for me. No questions asked. The bond was bigger, and getting the combat, tremendous, that's all. Never give it a thought. Never give it a second thought. I think it started with Sobel. Got to give him credit. Yep, got to give Sobel credit.
Did you guys ever see him again after the war?
Yes, I saw him, yeah. And I paid the dues to get him to come to the reunion and everything. I couldn't do it, though. He wouldn't do it. Yeah. From Chicago. So his sister came, and his nephew came to the reunion, a couple of reunions, yeah. But he died. So bad. So in a sense, he done his job. He done what he had to do. And things worked out for the good, you know. The way it was portrayed is true. A lot of people don't believe, but everything is, they said it was true, yeah.
Somebody called me and told me that this guy was going to write a book about our company, you know, and I said, who the hell's going to read it, you know, because I couldn't imagine that the readership for something like that would be very widespread. I mean, oh, sure, there's some military buffs, you know, and history buffs, but I mean, nothing like has happened as a result of that. It's all basically because of the TV series. I mean, that TV series, you know, did it, and because it was well done, and it was. But I would have never believed that would attain the popularity that it did.
Just being away. I want to get back to work, take money home to my mother. That's all I want to do. The same thing I was doing before I went away. Oh, yeah. They had it tough. Let me tell you, nobody knows. I say it on a documentary. Talk about heroes. We're the last. That's a lot of hooey, us being heroes. The heroes in the Second World War were the mothers of the world, not just Americans. German women cried too. Polish women cried. Russian women cried. Who cries any more than the Jewish? Who went through more? I seen it. I seen it. These people that tell you they won the Holocaust, let them come to me.